So this is about string theory, virgin birth, quantum physics. Maybe you better explain, Eric.
Look familiar? Like maybe hearing the voice of an old, long-lost friend from 40 years ago, and you call him up on the phone and you recognize that voice. Why should I think you recognize the voice of a wiggling string?
You got me. It doesn't make anything to me.
Physicists tell us that this entire universe can be broken down to, from the large objects we see of dogs and woods and rocks, stars, down to the periodic table of elements, that everything can be categorized 100 and something, what is it, 120, 100?
Yeah, about 124, I think.
124 or thereabouts.
118, I believe, but he's
118
counting.
various elements. So everything can be broken down to... You can tear them apart just like that. You can tear apart
Caleb,
the
quit.
elements down to atoms. And you can tear apart the atoms down to electrons and protons, which have a positive and a negative charge. Smallest particles. But then they found that you can even get smaller into something they call quarks, which make up the electrons. And then you can even break down the quarks, and this is all hypothetical, but strings, which are wiggling, and an amassing of wiggling strings make up the quarks make up the electrons positive, negative charge, protons, neutrons, elements, compounds, the universe. But what is the wiggling string? I don't believe there's any further theory which says what that's about. But that's the field of quantum physics as I understand it. Stephen Hawking, who's now deceased, didn't believe in a God, a created, intelligent, a creator as an intelligent source for all that's created. But he was looking for something called the theory of everything, which is what makes it all work, what gives it all a purpose, what gives it all a trajectory, a reason, as if it was, there was an archer, say, who intended a target, so he fits himself a bow with an arrow, puts fletchings on the arrow to keep it straight towards his objective, and then launches or shoots the arrow towards that goal in the future. So the theory of everything, in my estimation, has to fit that model, which is the aleph-tav. The aleph, they say, is an ox, because the word aleph means ox. But the aleph is kind of drawn as this arrowhead. The word for archer, artist, author, administrator, these are all English words that start with the letter A, like the one who has the idea to hit a target. The letter tav is a marker, a sign off in the distance. Paleo, the letter X shape, which literally is the target that the arrow flies to hit. So aleph-tav is not just the first letter and the last letter, but it's the concept that there's a purpose, a progression, and a goal achieved. So for Yeshua to say in the book of Revelation, I am the aleph and the tav, the first and the last, the beginning and the end, he's reiterating there the concept that there is an objective, a purpose, an intention, a plan, which is put into motion, into action, and it will accomplish its goal.
But in order for it to achieve its goals, it has to go through the entire aleph-tav to reach that destination.
It has to go through the entire aleph-bet
Aleph-bet.
to reach the tav.
But
So-
then that would mean that each of the letters is either a different stage or
phase.
a different phase that we would go through in order to reach the goal.
Just like the seasons, we are familiar with 4 seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall. We're familiar with 6 colors on the color wheel. Some people say 7. They include an ultraviolet in there, but technically there's 3 primary colors, red, yellow, blue, and 3 secondary colors, which would be a blending of the primaries. So you have orange, green, and purple. So the primary and the secondary sets up your basic 6-color progression, just like what they call the progression of the equinoxes, which takes almost 26,000 years. You've got what's called the Mazarot, or the constellations, the English word, which is to say there's a belt of star groupings all around the Earth, which there's this cycle which it takes almost 26,000 years to go all the way to start where one is referenced at a certain time of year to come all the way back to that, the progression of the equinoxes. So he's designed as this concept of wheels. So you got, Ezekiel saw this imagery in the heavens. The only way he described it for our regard is a wheel within a wheel. So we talked last video, put up a picture of the gears of clockworks, cogs, wheels with cogs. So there's something about a systematic progression by which the whole universe is fit. It's a complete system, but it works like clockwork, but there's something going on in phases, in sequences, in cycles. And the aleph-bet itself, the symbol that we use for the little icon of the Erectology, is the nun psalmic. The nun is the red letter, the psalmic being the purple letter, and then there's this array of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet in a circle around it. Almost like a little constellation of itself. Nun is the letter that has vitality, life. Psalmic is the letter which is an engineered structure. So you might say it's a support. The word psalmic literally means support or prop, like a tripod or a tree form is a support system. So the nun psalmic is a picture of the life support system, or the engineered apparatus, which is to say that the Creator engineered or intentionally designed a system that would cause life, facilitate life, regenerate life, restore life. So there's verses that I've seen in Scripture that don't read this way in English, but I can see embedded within the Hebrew words that Elohim created the universe to be restored. In other words, I've had people tell me, look, and I'm an idiot if I think that what humans have done to the air, the water, the plants, the genetic modification, the pollution, it's beyond repair. I disagree, because I've seen in the Hebrew words that it was built in to be recoverable.
Kind of like us too.
And it wouldn't even take a miracle to step in. It was part of the system. So too, no one of us is too far gone.
Right.
But the word shafah, as in the Hebrew language, which would be shavah kadosh, which would be the kadosh, or the set apart lip, language, tongue, shin, pei, he. Also that word not only means lip, language, tongue, or language, meaning the language, but it also means to cure from lunacy and restore to health. So I believe that the functional design that that Elohim, the Creator, built into how the Hebrew language works is that it will regenerate sanity and some sort of vitality of life, not only in the physical dimension of things, but also in the psychological,
Right.
or spiritual, or philosophical, or even sociological aspect, probably even economic. So the question is, how do we engage it? What do we do to access this life potential? The concept of the life support system is also the nun psalmic surrounded by the letters. Yeshua said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men to me. It's like the letter spelling the word The letters that spell the word nas means to be lifted up. Yahweh Nissi, he is my banner. The banner is that thing that you lift up. To lift up a banner is the same concept as Moshe lifting up this serpentine shape on
I
a
was going to say that,
pole.
yeah. All you have to do is to look at it and acknowledge it, and you'll be healed.
That's right. So these pictures in the scripture of stories,
Right.
which correlate exactly to pictures of the letters themselves, which correlate to things that Yeshua said, means that this is not coincidental, it's intentional. Because not only is the universe by design, but the language is by design, and everything Yeshua came and said and did was by design corroborating, validating the truth. And as a matter of fact, this word for truth is kuf. There's emet, aleph-mem-tav, but there's also kashet, kuf, shin, tet, which is basically the fletchings of the arrow, or that which causes it to remain true to the intended trajectory. So for the archer to not just take a wiggly stick and try to shoot it through the air, in which case aerodynamically it'll fail to hit the target, by getting a true straight yashar, yod shin resh, aleph shin resh, Hebrew words, the straight shaft of the arrow with the fletchings of the feathers on it, keeps it going that way. So that's what the Torah is. The fletchings on the arrow, that's what the Moedim are. To make sure we have a true continuing of the straight path, the Yashar Derek, generation after generation. He's got this whole thing set up as a life support system.
Only if we recognize it for that.
If we
don't,
choose,
then it's just a pile of stories.
but the stories are still true, and whether or not we recognize them, they're still true, and we can sit down on the seventh day, or sit down on the first day, or we can keep the festivals. The true potential of restoration of vitality that are in these very words remains unaccessed, inaccessible until we take them to heart. So Paul mentioned something about when the angel, Gabriel, spoke to Miriam, she took those matters to heart. There's something about, in the Mishkan Pattern, you got the big white fence, lines up with Het, Tet, and Yod. You've got the barbecue grill, lines up with the Torah instructions of Kaf and Lamed. You go back to the big white fence, that's the equivalent of choose life. Okay, choose life, that's a decision. That's a door, a dalet, choose life. And then learn the instructions, or choose to set your intellect onto rehearsing the instructions. That's the Kaf Lamed of the barbecue grill. But then there's the determined to nurture the words fondly within you, which is the mem nun of the laver.
Incubator.
As an incubator. And that lines up with the third festival that we're in right now, Shavuot, which is the 49 days of counting, and then the 50th day, which is a picture of the letter Nun, which is the number 50, leaping out of the womb as a baby being born, as the year of Jubilee jumps out of the 49 days of counting. So you've got Mem, which is 40, like 40 weeks of human incubation, gestation, and then 50, Nun. So you've got this 50, this counting to 50, having to do with these pictures around the laver, the Mem like a womb. Mem, Mayim, means water, but it's also this picture of this womb, or this environment where something is put to grow and develop until it's manifest out in the open. So what you do, or I do, with the seed planted in us. Yeshua gave parables of the sower and the seed, and he said the seed is the word of Elohim. So the seed planted in us lines up with the letter Lamed, which is literally, the word Lamed means teach and learn and rehearse. Go over it and over it. Teach and learn. The letter Kaf, which is like this open hand, which is lines, so you have like furrows in the field. The lines where the seed is planted in the furrows, or you have the lines of the Torah text that you just go over it and over it and over it. And that's tilling it into the within you intellectually processing into your brain the synapses of your brain, of the dendrites of the neural linkages. But then there's this other thing. Taking it to heart is a whole nother piece of the equation.
Right.
Another phase of the sequence. Kaf, Het, Tet, Yod, choose life. Learn the instructions, Kaf, Lamed. Take it to heart, Mem, Nun. And then Samik, bear the fruit of doing what he said, implementing it into action. But let's go back to this virgin birth business. I've heard over the years that some people think, no way would the creator of heavens and earth ever come down to earth as a human. Is that what he did? Did the infinite, immaterial, immortal creators of the heavens and the earth come down and walk the earth as himself a human being? I've heard it said that people say Jesus Christ is the Father. Is that true? I've heard it said that when Yeshua was in the Garden of Gethsemane praying, and he says, "Hi, Dad, it's me, you." What? I've heard it said more Christians killed each other in the first 2-3 centuries right after the days that Yeshua walked the earth. More Christians killed each other over these matters than the Romans ever did during their inquisitions of throwing them into the lions in the Colosseum and such.
Our own worst enemies.
Why would he leave these matters so confusing? Why would the Creator say, have no other gods, no images, not male or female, not an animal, a bird, a reptile, a fish, have no symbolic representation of me? I only gave you a voice, and then come and show up in human form and say, if you don't acknowledge that I am the one who told you have no masculine imagery, if you fail to acknowledge this masculine imagery, you're going to burn in hell forever. Why would he do that to us?
Kind of seems contradictory.
Which is why any good Jew cannot accept Jesus Christ as God the Father in the flesh.
Makes sense.
Well, now we have quite a predicament.
Yeah.
What do? If we acknowledge that Jesus Christ is the Father in the flesh, according to the Christians, we get to go to heaven. And if we don't, we're going to burn in hell. But yet, according to the Jews, if we think that this is the immaterial, infinite Father walking the earth, that's idolatry, and then we'll go to hell. And if we don't acknowledge him, then we remain true to his instructions, and then we can be in his presence forever. So now the burden is on us with no reason to make a decision one way or the other. What are you going to choose?
You have to make a decision.
It's life and death.
Yeah.
Not only if you have one idea and I have another, can we kill each other for having the wrong idea, for life and death on the planet Earth, but it's life and death for eternity if we misdetermine this conundrum. Which is why a lot of people say, I'm staying out of it. Too bad, you're a human being, you must engage this dilemma, or else by default you're going to burn in hell. Be ejected from the eternal kingdom.
Sure.
Gosh, serious business.
So you have a solution?
Yes, thankfully. This is the answer. Okay, end of class, we're done.
Okay, see
Remember
you later.
that answer. No, wait, what does this mean? The wiggling
Don't
string.
leave us hanging.
How can the answer be in a wiggling string?
He's embedded the answer within us.
Well, in the beginning there was a word, Gospel of John.
Right.
And the word was used as this lens, as it were, through which was projected the will, the intent, the purpose or plan. These are words used in translating different verses of the Scripture. For example, he says in Isaiah, as I have planned, so shall it be. As I have purposed, so shall it arise or come about. So the plan, the purpose, the intention is the aleph it coming about is the tav. So there's an embedded cryptic aleph-tav, not just by saying beginning and the end, first and last, but as the purpose will be accomplished. And then he says, the words that go forth from my mouth will not return void. They will accomplish what I set them forth to do. There's another embedded cryptic aleph-tav.
Right.
So if there's this original word, as it says in John chapter 1, through which the intention or purpose of the Father was projected, and out on the other side is manifest all this beautiful creation of material substance, then this word acts as a transmogrifier. Got that from Calvin and Hobbes.
I saw that issue.
Yeah.
You've been waiting all day to spring that word on us, haven't you?
Transmogrification. So then this word leaps into its own device, as it were, and becomes matter, cosmos. The pinnacle of all matter in the cosmos is humanity, human being, and the archetype pinnacle human is the one we call Yahusha, Yod He Vav Shin Ayin. Some people spell the name differently. I spell it Yod He Vav Shin Ayin because after the book of Deuteronomy is the book we call Joshua. That's how he spells that name, Yod He Vav Shin Ayin. Okay, for what it's worth. The point is, he is this word in human form. This word was used to compose the instructions of the Torah. What is this word? We've discussed this in other videos, that this word is the Hebrew aleph-bet. The 22 letters of the Hebrew aleph-bet is this word, which became the Torah, which is that which composed the being in human form of Yahusha. So how does this word function? Interesting enough, the word in Hebrew for ruach, which is translated spirit or wind or mind or determination, also means expanse. The ruach of this vista is from here to that mountain. The ruach up is from here to those clouds. It goes beyond the clouds, but we see the clouds, and so our vision stops at the clouds because the blue sky is too unattachable.
Yeah.
We can't attach our vision to it, but we can attach our vision to that what we see. The ruach between me and you is about the same ruach as between me and this plant. It's about an arm's reach. So ruach is an expanse. So the ruach of Elohim is, if the Father that we reference is the immaterial infinite, he created this word which is material and finite. And it stretches from aleph to tav. So the ruach of the aleph-bet that the Father gave us to reference him by, because it says in John 1, this word is Elohim.
Right.
It says it's the Father, it's Elohim. So he gave us this word and fit our mind and our nephesh, our soul, our heart, our being, to engage this word specifically as a hand fits a glove, by which then we can apprehend the immaterial infinite Father. So somehow, as we apprehend or we wrap our minds around this word, we're wrapping our minds around him who is so infinite and immaterial and ethereal that he can't be even touched.
Would it be correct in saying it's a representation of him?
No, to put something into the form of representation is to make an image or a pattern or a model, which is the bet form. The letter bet means house or to embody. So yes, this word, it says in John 1, the word is with Elohim.
Right.
That's the letter bet. The prefix letter bet literally means it with, in, on, among, through, or against, or in the condition of. So this word is in the condition of the Father, but it also is. Well, the letter aleph actually represents isness. Isness. So if you have a word that starts with an aleph, like ani, aleph nun yod, or ehyeh, aleph hey yod hey, or anoki, aleph nun kaf yod, or ati, aleph-tav yod, those are all words that are self-referential of the one speaking or the one being referred to in the first person. So for the aleph-bet to start with the letter aleph, which is the silent letter, is a picture that says, whoever put this here is represented by the aleph. But soon as you try to describe the aleph, which is immaterial and silent, boom, it becomes bet form.
Right.
So he's the one inferred to by the aleph-bet, but he also said the aleph-bet will serve as the is that we can look at. But if we try to touch the aleph-bet as an aleph, it can't be an aleph, it's automatically in bet form. So even if we say that the creator is that one that we can wrap our mind around, is the guy who created this, that's the aleph, that's the Father. Soon as we try to wrap our minds around that, it puts him into bet form. So the aleph form is in an impossible place or concept to even reach. We're stuck in this realm of betness.
Right.
And our minds, our beings, were not designed by the aleph one to extend outside of the betness. Years ago, a friend referred to this phrase, cosmic consciousness. I said, and he described something. I says, yeah, I think I understand. He says, impossible! You can't understand cosmic consciousness, you fool! He was describing aleph and bet. He didn't know it, but that's what that was all about. For me to think I can wrap my mind around this obscurity, alephness, is because I have to write the aleph into a letter form. That makes it automatically bet. But here's the thing. For the infinite, immaterial one to choose to manifest himself somehow into the cosmos, can't he do anything he wants? Yeah. If he chooses to do so, he's perfectly able, capable, and has the prerogative to do so.
And the power.
Therefore, we could say, yeah, but we don't know how he did the power. Yeah, but he tells us. What he said was, in another place in the New Testament, that the Ruach of Elohim overshadowed this young lady called Mary, or Miriam, and she conceived. Now, we can study the physiological process of conception. We got great scientists and doctors. They can figure out all kinds of stuff. They're pretty smart these days, I tell you. We got microscopes and everything.
Well, boy, howdy.
So somehow, if we look at the Hebrew words, I'm thinking it'll tell us something. So, if the Infinite One wants to put himself into finite human form, or some aspect of himself, it's not the aleph that becomes bet, it's the bet which starts walking the earth as a vav. The bet form walking the earth, dalet, for the bet form to be object, cosmos, matter, to walk is to gimel, the letter with a foot, walking the earth, dalet, coming through some door, some portal, hey, appearing as, in the essence of vav, humanity. Vav is the connector letter. It's a nail, it's a hook, it's a bridge. Right. Somehow there's a connection, vav, and then there's the letter Zion, the seventh letter, which is cut off. Vav is the sixth letter. That's another part of the story, but we're just going to stick right in here at the hey vav, dalet hey vav area. Now Yeshua claimed as the vav man, he said, hey, I'm the door, the dalet. So the vav, hey, proclaiming to be the dalet by which we can gimel back to the bet, the house of Aleph, the Father, the Infinite One. He was using these first 6 letters as his story, his sermon, his objective, his mission was to come down to earth from Aleph, from the infinite other realm, to the material realm bet, gimmeling as the ambassador, the emissary, sent through a type of dalet, being born of a virgin, into the world, hey, here's the Vav man, and then Zion be killed, suffer the death of these Vav men, be put into the tomb, the Chet, the big round rock rolled in front of the tomb, Tet, the Roman seal, but also the seal of death, Yod, holding that tomb shut.
Right.
There's the first 10 letters. Sprouting back to resurrection, Zadi, rising up, Kuf, coming back at the very end, Resh Shin Tav. But the point is, how did he do that? We could say, oh, well, it's just a mystery. But here's the thing. The word to overshadow is Zadi Lamed Lamed, very similar to the guy Betzalel. This is Zalal. Betzalel is the guy who made the Mishkan, so it points us to the Mishkan pattern. The word Zalal means to overshadow or shade or to put something in the oven. It also means to exploit. So for the Holy Spirit, well, what's this Holy Spirit? Is it the third entity, person of the Trinity? Well, wait a minute. The word Ruach means expanse, the distance. The aleph-bet of 22 letters between aleph and tav, like this string, aleph to tav, is the Ruach of Elohim. And because it's from him, it's kadosh. It's not the aleph-bet, I don't believe, the human aleph-bet, the Hebrew aleph-bet is of human origin. That Yahweh Zavot made the Hebrew aleph-bet, which became the human, but it's also the Ruach HaKodesh, because it is the expanse that represents and tells of him, his character, his identity, his purpose, his aleph-tav. It's all right here in these 22 letters. So if the 22-letter Hebrew aleph-bet is the Ruach HaKodesh, and somehow it hovered over Mary, if you translate the word Zalal as overshadow or hover over, that's a picture. But it also means to exploit or make use of Mary. But Mary served to be the vessel like an oven. To put something in the oven is also the word Zalal. Now, if you go back to Genesis 1, verse 2, it says the Ruach of Elohim, back in the first day of creation, merchefet, well, hovered. It's the same word as flutter, or vibrate, or generate frequencies. So what caused this string to start wiggling? The Ruach of Elohim started wiggling. That's what it says. The alphabet started wiggling. That's what caused the creation to manifest in physical form. So what he did with Mary, he didn't use a human man to impregnate her. He somehow, the Father somehow put the wiggling alphabet into the body of Miriam, and she conceived a human being starting to grow within her. So let's back up. Some might think that's impossible. What is the earth? The earth, the soil, is composed of the wiggling alphabet, back there in Genesis 1.
All things around us are.
So for Elohim to pick up some soil here, for him to pick up some soil and form it into a man, this is composed of the aleph-bet. And then he breathes, and it comes to life. Well, he's breathing in the aleph-bet.
Right.
So for Elohim to cause the aleph-bet to wiggle and form all of matter, and then to take some matter and to put some more aleph-bet into it, his ruach, and cause it to have life, he then speaks words, which is more aleph-bet, and this life starts thinking as a human. So he takes Miriam, who provided the human egg, female side, and he somehow puts in this aleph-bet and wiggles it, which looks like the male side of the contribution, the little sperm with the wiggling tail. It's the same picture, because in the head, actually the sperm cell looks like a tadpole, which is a picture of the letter bet, which means to materialize. So he takes the female contribution, which is the body format, and puts in the masculine contribution, which is the life-giving aleph-bet, and causes this one that we call Yeshua to start forming as a zygote, an embryo, a fetus, and to be birthed 40 weeks later as an actual human.
Yeshua, the son of Nun.
Joshua, son of Nun, or Yeshua, son of Nun, the guy that was Moshe's protege, The word nun is, they say it means fish. Actually, dog is fish. Dog, not like Caleb the dog, but dog is still the word for fish in Hebrew. But nun is that one that multiplies and has life. So a single cell goes through what we call mitosis, which starts dividing and multiplying, which is the evidence of life. So Yeshua, son of Nun, the word son is ben, bet, nun, which itself, bana, is to mean constructed. For us to think the word ben only means son is wrong English thinking. It means to be constructed of physical matter. So if Yeshua, son of Nun, is to say Yeshua is that one sent gimmeling from aleph in bet form, composed of matter. This word takes on matter and becomes of the elements of the cosmos. What is it that's doing it? It's the aleph-bet. Is that the Father? It's what the Father created to give us reference of him. But Yeshua didn't say, I am the Father. He said, I and the Father are echad. What does echad mean? Yes, it's translated one, but it's of a unified being, a unified mind, a unified purpose, a unified scope, and a unified voice. And he also said that we should be echad with him. He's not saying that we should become the Father. He's saying we should be echad with him. So there's this little picture we did the other day. 4 letters in Yod He Vav He, 4 letters in Ehyeh, Aleph He Yod He. The voice of the Creator, the voice of the Torah, the voice of the Mashiach, the voice of the Ruach. If you have different voices, that's not echad. If they're singular, that's echad. So if Yeshua speaks, you can't say, oh, that was him talking, not the Father. He says, I only say the things I hear the Father saying. He also, there's a verse that says no one has seen the Father, but yet it says that Moshe spoke face to face. But no, that's panei al panei. But is that face to face literal? He doesn't have a face. And I know some people get upset about that. He also doesn't have a body. I know some people are going to get upset about that. But he said no one has ever seen the Father. Yeshua said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. He's not claiming to be the Father. What he's claiming to be is the bet form of the aleph. So what is the virgin birth? The Ruach, in its pure kadosh format, untainted by the human sin problem. The aleph-bet, pure from the Father's heart, the Father's being, getting put into the human female, produces the ben, the materialized. The word bet nun hey is the word for construction. This house was constructed. That's bet nun hey. This book is a piece of construction, bet nun hey. The word bina has to do with understanding. If you can wrap your mind around it, it's in bet form. Yeshua came here putting the aleph-bet into a form that represents the Father such that we can wrap our mind around him, what he was saying, where he's at, where his heart, where his mind, where his will. That's the bet form. That's the word son. An interesting thing, not to get into it now, but just mentioning it. We're discussing these things as food for thought for people. That the word mayim is the word water in Hebrew. It's spelled mem yod mem, mayim. And the way you spell that is that there's a letter mem and a yod as a separator, then another mem, separating water from water by a letter yod, which is a working hand or that thing which is produced by work, dividing these two waters. Well, that's a picture of what happened on day 2 of creation. Water was separated from water, and a rakia, something that means to be worked, to be stretched out like pizza dough, forming a big round pizza crust. That's what the letter yod is. So just curious, why would day 2 of creation be the exact picture of the spelling of the word water? Separating two waters by something that's worked and stretched out as a divider between them. I'm saying there's more to that study that we've talked about before, but I'm just trying to show somebody that part of the study of Hebrew is to notice these correlations and try to make sense out of them. Making sense out of the virgin birth is that the aleph-bet, being the pure expression of the Father, is put into a human format because Eve, Miriam, the woman provided the eggshell, the vessel, the body to contain it in human form. But the it of Yeshua is the Hebrew aleph-bet, which is the it, the manifest object of the Father that he projected and gave to us. But to say that Jesus is the Father, or even Yeshua is the Father, I would have to disagree, because the bet isn't the aleph. The bet is the manifestation of what the aleph, being silent, is expressing.
That makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you. It also clarifies a lot of things. One of the things that I've physics, they say that everything vibrates at frequencies. So it's possible, and that there's in all things there is space between the atoms. And if something is vibrated at a certain frequency, it could literally go right through something without ever destroying it, hurting it, whatever. And this is probably how the seed was delivered to Miriam, as that it was literally vibrated right into her, and she would have absolutely no discomfort or anything. But
From what I understand, a couple points about that. Physicists, scientists even today don't know why things oscillate.
right,
A light beam moves like this. Water ripples move like this. Sound moves like this. Why? They don't know. Well, in water you can have pressure and above and below, but why should a light wave move like this in outer space where there's no friction to resist it? Why does it do that? Because the Ruach Elohim merachefet al panei tahom. The word tahom is deep. The word surface of the water is the mayim. Related subjects. My point is, there's something about him wiggling this, fluctuating the aleph-bet, which is the source and the composition of everything. So you have in the letters, there's a space between the letters.
right.
On the chart, we have right down through the middle of the chart, it talks about meta, which is a space between. What does it take to transition from this phase to that phase? If we break down the three primary colors and, well, let's fill in some space. Well, now you have the three secondary colors. Well, there's more spaces. You can say red, orange, red. You can add these more. Now they have 1 million colors you can get on a LCD screen. It's like, where did he come up with 1 million colors? They're just slices and fractions of ever smaller, but it's still us trying to put reason and understanding in between, as it were, the storyboard images of the big jumps. So the more we refine it, the more we're trying to zero in, but it boils down to the aleph-bet that he started wiggling, and there's all of this, and so Yeshua himself is the wiggling aleph-bet somehow interjected into the body of Miriam. And like they say, why did Yeshua walk through the walls? Because he was pure form frequency, not subject to even the body of Miriam anymore. And it's not that he was ghost-like, he was real and solid. I heard it said that if you could look at a material atom, there's as much space between the electrons as between the Earth and Jupiter. Look at all the empty space. It's like if Earth was one electron and Jupiter is another atom or another electron, that forms the atom, which forms what we think is solid. Our sense of reality is way distorted compared to the reality. And if we try to relegate our belief to what we can comprehend, then the system that determines what we understand, to the degree that it's subject to fallibility, is the pattern by which we will be off course, and then all of our theological doctrines will be equally off course.
Yeah.
If we come back to the pure Hebrew aleph-bet, paleo, it's back as far as you can go to the primal origin source. The pure water right out of the spring, as you said earlier the other day.
The knowledge of Yahuwah will cover the Eretz as the Mayan covers the sea. Cover the knowledge of Yahuwah, alphabet.
The knowledge of Yahuwah will cover the earth the same way that water covers the earth, as it were. There's something about understanding Yahuwah is all in this aleph-bet. To have a problem with Yeshua being human, or whether he is divinity, is answered to by the picture of what is this alphabet. If you think this alphabet was composed by a bunch of cavemen grunting and drawing little squiggles in the dirt, a picture of an ox and a camel and a fishhook, you've missed the whole thing.
Yeah, and it will only mean that to you forever.
And if that's what you think it is, and you base your doctrines on that, you'll be completely spun out of control into some weird cult or phony baloney religion. But if you can comprehend what these 22 letters are as the purest form of expression that the Father, the creator of the heavens and the earth, could possibly invent, he invented them to represent himself. So to study the Hebrew is to look at the purest essence that he delivered to humanity. And then realizing that we ourselves and everything, even Caleb the dog, is composed of these Hebrew letters. So as you study science, I've heard some people say, oh, science is bad, science is evil. Other people said, to think is carnal. It's like to process thoughts because Yahuwah spoke to Adam. How much more pure can you get? To study, which science says, I want to try to understand, to know how he built what he built. That's also, you could call that pure religion in a sense.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at how does this turn into this? To breathe the air is also the same thing, because he breathed in the life into Adam to acknowledge the truth that he who is the aleph, the silent voice, built this incredible place. That's spelling Hebrew words. That is worship. That is prayer. That is relating to him, acknowledging what he made, how he made, and where do we find our place in it.
I tell you, it's exciting when, instead of looking at the scripture simply as a bunch of stories, to understand that the words are compositions of the letters which in themselves tell the story. Brings a whole new dynamic when we look at these scriptures, and a whole new level. And I'm not talking about going all goofy-eyed and spiritual and stuff like that, even though this is what we're actually talking about in essence. But it makes it so much more fascinating, to almost like a discovery. Like archaeologists digging for that hidden treasure, knowing that it's there, but I just have to dig down to find it. And when I think about the Paleo-Hebrew, I just think about all the possibilities, all of the answers that we don't see in our translation of the scripture, because they're missing so much of the essence of the context that it was written in, or the time period, or the culture, or any of that stuff. And I don't know, to me, when I look at the Paleo and I look at the scriptures, it makes me want to dig into it. It makes me want to search it out and find out more.
In closing here, take a couple minutes. Paleo Parpar has written this up. Messiah in the Hebrew aleph-bet. Yeshua in Revelation 22:13 said, I am the aleph and the tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. So here Joseph is going to run through for a reference of Mashiach, Yeshua in the aleph-bet. Aleph. In Psalms 92 it says, there's this verse, before the mountains were born, and you had not yet fashioned the earth and the inhabited land, and from the remotest past and from the most distant future, you are El. Psalms 90 verse 2. So Aleph represents the artist, the architect, the one who put all this stuff into being. Cloaked in a body, bet. Therefore, coming into the world, he says, Hebrews 10:5, slaughtering and meal offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared from me. So there's this concept of not only every human, but the Mashiach himself as the one who stepped into the body that was prepared, composed of these 22 letters, to come down and walk the earth. Gimel, traveled, the voyager. John 6:38, because I have come down out of heaven not to do my own desire, but the desire of him who sent me. Gimel concepts. I didn't come down here to play around and go, woohoo, this sure is fun on the earth, though that's what he did. He walked the earth. But he came down specifically from heaven to earth. This is the Mashiach. So what we're doing is we're looking at each of these 22 Hebrew letters and saying this is describing the Mashiach. Now, if you want to call him Joe Bob or Sally or Jesus or Yeshua or Hector or Francis, call him whatever you want. I'm saying these letters are describing the guy, the one who is the Mashiach. Now you got to figure out who it is he's talking about. Yeah. Aleph, the architect, the artist who planned this whole thing. Bet, cloaked in a body that was specifically prepared to Gimel, travel from the heavens to the earth. Dalet, John 17:4, I have esteemed you on the earth, having accomplished the work that you have given me that I should do. So Yeshua now, speaking these words, says, here I am on the earth. He claimed to be the door through which nobody could access the Father's house except through him. So for Yeshua, Yahusha, Yodevav Shinayan, to be the one making that claim, draws our attention specifically and says, was he a liar or was he telling the truth? He's not forming a new religion. He's saying there's something about the reason he came here was to be the portal through which we could access back to the Father's house, which sets up a new religion. But I'm just trying to make some point of this. Hey, revealed. Hey means the, it means to be revealed. It says in John 14:9, he who has seen me has seen the Father. He came in the expression of the Father to express the will of the Father so that we, listening to his words, could behold that which is otherwise invisible to us. Vav, as a man. This is John 8:28, when you lift up the Son of Adam, then you shall know that I am he, and that I do none at all of myself, but as my Father taught me, these words I speak. Yeshua was not claiming to be the Father. Zion, Mark 9:31, put to the weapon. The son of Adam is being delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him. Het, Mark 6:29, placed in a tomb. His taught ones came and took away his dead body and laid it in a tomb. Tet, Matthew 27:60 and 66. That's the big round rock that sealed the tomb. Yosef rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb and went away. And they, his taught ones, his Talmudim, his disciples, went and safeguarded the tomb, sealing the stone and setting the watch. Yod, John 10:18. Yod is a hand that holds of strong that works a tool, and he says, I do this by my own hand. Yeshua said, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have the authority to lay it down, and I have the authority to receive it again. This command I have received from my Father. Kaf, the open hand. Deuteronomy 5:15, that displays the standards of heaven, like the constitutional lines of instruction. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim, Egypt, and that Yahweh your Elohim brought you out from there by a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore Yahweh your Elohim commanded you to remember the Sabbath day. This open hand is like the hook, the lines of the Constitution, the instructions that we must keep because he said so. The letter Lamed. The Lamed is a shepherd's staff. It speaks of the instructions, the authority. The number 12, Matthew 13:54, Yeshua said, I am the good shepherd, in John 10:11. And when he had come into his own country, he taught them in their congregation. Mem, the 13th letter, John 4:13. Whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst, and the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. The letter Nun, jumping out of the Mem, the water, like a geyser bursting forth from that drink that turns into this living fountain. John 10:10. I have come that they may possess life, and that they might possess it beyond measure. Nun is that letter, like son of Nun, which is multiplication, like fish multiply, this exponential vitality of increase.
Hallelujah.
The letter Samik, which is the prop, the trellis being attached to the source. He says in John 6:48, Yeshua said, I am the vine, you are the branches. That's John 15:5. I am the bread of life. John 10:25, going to the letter ayin, about bearing fruit and the examination of that fruit, he says, he who stays in me and I in him, he bears much fruit. That's the psalmic picture of the vine and the branches. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness concerning me. Look at the fruit. Evaluate the fruit. That's all ayin. Put into the scales of balance. Weigh carefully. Balance exactly. Look, measure, determine. He's saying, look at what I'm doing. Hear what I'm saying. Compare it to the words of Torah. Know who I am. By my words, by my actions, by the fruit I bear. That's what Yeshua said of himself. Not claiming to be the Father, but by claiming to be the very heart of the Father, manifest in human form, for us to regard and have access to that door back to the Father's house. The letter Pei, which is an open mouth, or that which opens. Matthew 10:27, Yeshua said, what I say to you in the dark, speak in the light, and what you hear in the ear, proclaim on the housetops. He's telling us to open these words as we have been given open revelation of them. The letter Zadi, which is a picture of Aaron's rod that budded, burst to life overnight. The dead stick lived, like Yeshua bursting out of the grave. Though he was impaled in weakness, yet he lives by the power of Elohim, 2 Corinthians 13:4. For as the earth brings forth its bud, and the garden causes the seed to shoot up, so the Master Yahweh causes righteousness and praise to shoot up before all the nations. Isaiah 61:11, the word Zadik is righteousness. There's a picture of the resurrection of Yeshua. There's the picture of the restoration of the earth through when we do righteousness, it will re-sprout. And there's a picture of the confederated 12 tribes of Israel coming back in unity together to rule the face of the earth during the millennial 1,000 years, Revelation 20. Letter Kuf, where the picture of Yeshua after he resurrected, he ascended up into heaven, and the Melech, the angel, said he's going to be coming back. While he was blessing them, he was taken up into the heaven. Luke 24:51. After this I looked and saw a great crowd standing before the throne and before the Lamb, crying out, deliverance belongs to our Elohim and to the Lamb. That's the picture of the Father and the Son, not that the Son is the Father. Revelation 7:9 and 10. Elohim has given us everlasting life, and this life is in his Son. And again, that's in the constructed bet noon, the bet form of his word. It's the bet form of the aleph. 1 John 5:11. Resh, the exalted man, the transformed man. 1 Corinthians 15:51 and Philippians 2:9. Elohim was highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. We will be changed suddenly as in the twinkling of the eye at the last shofar. That which dies will put on immortality. That's the promise he gave us of an everlasting life in his presence in a whole other dimension, the dimension of the Reshin Tav, or Kuf Reshin Tav, after sprouting back to life at Zadi, which is a whole different dimension than before he was put in the tomb back at Hevav Zion. The letter Shin, consuming, refining fire. Malachi 3:2, and he who is able to bear the day of his coming, and who is able to stand when he appears, for he is like the fire of a refiner, which is a sheen picture. Deuteronomy 4:24, for Yahweh your Elohim is a consuming fire, a jealous Elohim. And then the letter Tav, fulfilling the covenant as he said. We got Isaiah 55:11. My word that goes forth from my mouth, it does not return to me empty, but shall do what I please, and shall certainly accomplish what I sent it for. Isaiah 14:24. Truly as I have planned, so shall it be, and as I have purposed, so it stands. These are the verses I mentioned earlier. In John 19:30, when Yeshua took the sour wine, it says, it has been accomplished. The purpose that he came down here for, he fulfilled, he did, and when it was time for the end, he gave up the ghost, was put into the het, the tomb. There's Yeshua and things he said and what he came here to do in the 22 letters of the aleph-bet. If you can see them. It's all in the wiggling string. We wear the zitziot with the blue thread. Of course, you may not recognize this isn't white with blue, but it's got the blue. This is Ephraim's zitzi. The blue thread will remind us